I had asked Bill Ballou, one of our major technical artists, mechanical engineer, brilliant man, to come up with I wanted to be able to walk upside down in the ceiling, and maybe there was some kind of weird bungee contraption he could make that allowed us to walk on the ceiling and on the floor. He came up with these drawings. I mean, this was the mechanical drawings for how this machine was going to be able to get attached to the ground, or sit on the ground anyway, and have a body in a twisting harness insert itself into a fork, get clamped into that fork, and the fork itself was on a beautiful pole that had a swivel device that allowed the pole or the I-beam, the aluminum I-beam, to receive this swivel and this yoke, this fork, this tuning fork, where the body was attached to the two sides and the body was in a swivel harness. So you essentially had a number of degrees of rotational capacity, and it had hefty counterweights on one end of it, enough to make the dancer trapped in the yoke weigh 12 pounds. So she was an anti-gravity phenomenon. Originally, I wanted there to be 3 of these rotating devices. And when it finally arrived at the studio, at that time we were in Bed-Stuy, we had left Canal Street and started moving around to different garages in Brooklyn. But that machine came into Brooklyn, and it was clearly in a 20 by 20 foot square. There was only room for one. And then I'm thinking, a solo, what a drag, you know, how am I gonna make a solo with this machine? It turned out that my idea of this wasn't just an anti-gravity machine. I needed to juxtapose it with all the other dancers who were ground bearers. And there was a soloist who was the air machine, the air bearer. And it ended up being about juxtaposing what a body that weighs 12 pounds on Earth could do, juxtaposed to 6 other bodies or 5 other bodies that weighed what they weighed, and they were absolutely persistently interrupted by the force of gravity, as we all are. And and showing that juxtaposition was so moving that I located by that experiment the content of this idea. And it was always something that came after the machine came in the room, or after the boards came in the room. I didn't quite know what it would be, and how could you? It's an activity of inquiry, and you can ask a question of it. But if you expect to know the answer before you walk into the room and spend 20 million hours and many months, then I think you're cheating. You're just not allowing yourself to gain the information that this machine, this circumstance, this moment provides. But initially, he had designed a ceiling, and Michael Caselli built a gorgeous box truss that the ceiling got attached to. And Heather Carson did the lights, so as we turned around at the Joyce in 1997, this was premiered, it was called Fly. And as we went around the first time, Hope Clark was the performer, and all the other dancers were hanging on to the counterweights, or pushing her, or doing all these different magical exertions to have her get a little assistance in what she was trying to do. But we would run on the ceiling, not we, her, and then run on the floor, and run on the ceiling, run on the floor. But it was able to provoke so many different variations, even once we got rid of the ceiling, because it became something that was really a road, needed to be a road less traveled. It didn't add a whole lot to the dance itself, I didn't think. I won't tell you all the hard lessons we learned, because at that time it wasn't bolted to the ground, and at that time the locks on the swivel that went on the arm that the tuning fork was attached to did not have a lock, and nor did this swivel that attached the tuning fork to the beam that was the fly machine, did not have a lock on it. So I won't go into, someday